You are welcome to Basic Science and Technology class for JS1. Our topic for today is living things and non-living things. Objective of the lesson. 1. Students should be able to define living and non-living things. 2. Students should be able to state the characteristics of living and non-living things. 3. Students should be able to state the importance of plants and animals. 4. Students should be able to state the differences of plants and animals. Now let us look at the introduction. What are living things? Living things are things that possess life in them. They are basically grouped into plants and animals. For examples, when we look at maize, cassava, mango, flowering plants are examples of plants. And examples of animals include things like lion, cat, tiger, and so on and so forth. Non-living things, on the other hand, simply means things that do not have life in them, or living things that the life has been taken out of them. For example, stone, rock, pencil, table, chairs, dead plants and animals are examples of non-living things. Non-living things are classified into two, basically metals and non-metals. Here are the displays of some of the living and non-living things. To your left on your screen are images of living things, and to your right are images of non-living things. Now let us look at some of the characteristics of living things. By this we are referring to both plants and animals. First, living things exhibit movement, and by this, in plants, living things carry out a slight or bent kind of movement. But in animals, living things, animals can move from one place to the other. Another characteristic of living thing is respiration. By respiration, we mean the ability to use oxygen to break down food to supply energy to work. Nutrition is another characteristic of living things. By nutrition, we mean feeding and the utilization of food. So living things can feed. Another characteristic of living thing is irritability. When we talk about irritability, we are referring to the ability of living things, that is plants and animals, to respond to changes in their environment. Another unique feature of living thing is growth. Growth is an increase in size and height or weight. Another characteristic of living thing is excretion. Excretion, this is the process by which living organisms get rid of waste products, especially metabolic waste, from their system, and living things carry out these things. Another feature is reproduction. Living things can give birth or can produce their kind. Another characteristic is that death. I'm sure most of you will be wondering that why will death be a characteristic of living thing? Anything that has life has the ability for that life to be taken out of it. So death is another characteristic of living thing. All living things can die. The last two were not stated before, but it is now agreed by scientists that they are characteristics of living thing. That is, we're talking about adaptation and competition. By adaptation, we are referring to features possessed by living organisms which helps them to make environment convenient for them to survive. And by competition, this is the ability of living things to compete for available resources in the environment. Living things can compete for so many things. They compete for food, they compete for mate, and so on and so forth. So these are the characteristics of living things. Now let us look at the properties of non-living things. Earlier on, I have told you that non-living things are classified basically into two: metals and non-metals. Now let us look at the characteristics of metals. The first thing I have here is that they are malleable. By this we mean that they can be beaten into shape. The next thing I have about metals is that they are ductile. By this we are referring to that they can be drawn into wires. Another thing about metal is that they are metallic lusters, and by this we mean that they can shine when they are polished. Another characteristics or properties of metal is that they have high melting and boiling point. Another characteristics of metal is that they are good conductors of heat and electricity. And lastly, metals make sonorous sound when beaten. Now let us look at the characteristics of non-metals. They are non-malleable, they are non-ductile, they have low melting point, they are poor conductors of heat and electricity, and they do not make sonorous sound. Let us look at the importance of living things. By this we are referring to the importance of both plants and animals. First of all, let's look at the plant. Importance of plants. 1. They provide us with food. 2. They are sources of income to farmers. 3. They serve as raw materials in industries, for instance, industries like textile. 4. They are used in production of drugs. 5. They are used for construction purposes. For instance, timber is used in building and construction of houses. 6. They are used to prevent erosion or windbreak. So these are some of the importance of plants. Let's look at the importance of animals. 1. They serve as source of food and meat. 2. They provide the farmers income also. 3. They can be used for manure production, such as their dung. 4. They serve as source of raw materials for industries, such as for a leather company that makes use of animal skin. 5. They are used as means of transportation, especially in northern Nigeria. And the last thing I have here is that they can be used for tourism. That is, animals are kept in tourist centers like zoological gardens. Now I want us to look at the differences between plants and animals. Some of the differences. For plants, plant can carry out slight movement or bent movement, but for animals, they can move from one place to another. For plants growth is unlimited, but for that of animals, their growth is highly limited. For plants respond to stimulus in a very slow manner, but for animal, there's a quick response to stimulus. For plants, the sense organ is absent, but for animals, there's presence of sense organ. And the last thing I have here is that for plants, they can manufacture their food through a process called photosynthesis, where they make use of chlorophyll. And for animals, they do not manufacture their food, but they depend on the food that is being manufactured by plants.